Okay, I think it's time that we started. We do still have some technical aspects and challenges here, but hopefully they will solve along the line. So, hello and very welcome to this webinar in the domain of human resources and people of culture. I want to make you aware this session is being recorded. My name is Johan Krotén, and I will be hosting you this exciting hour of presentations and reasoning around the definite hype words of agility and digitalization. Is digitalization of HR a necessity to enable agile HR? There will be a possibility to place your questions at the bottom in the chat, and we will try to pick them up at the end of this session where we have a Q&A session. There will also pop up a couple of different polls, and we appreciate if you can spare some time and fill them in for us. NTT Data is a global IT service provider with the aim to transform your trust into value. We aim to transform your digital landscape into good business value, and specifically today, we aim to help you transform your HR work into useful value for employees and managers in your company. In our Nordic line of business, we are some 60 experts in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland who currently help numerous companies in their transformation work. Agile is a commonly used word. I believe agile HR and agility is very interesting. Since I have a background in the development domain, I know that agile is both praised and questioned, and actually in some areas even cursed. Digitalization, on the other hand, is also a very commonly used word. I also believe digitalization is very interesting. The never-ending strive to develop efficient processes and create IT support for these. To free time for all colleagues through automation of tasks. To be able to spend this freed time on what is most important for you based on your strategy and tactics. To share information quickly and easy. When setting up this webinar, I felt that transforming with both agile and digitalization in mind is not necessarily a smooth walk in the park. What about concepts like flexibility, feedback loops, and best practice processes? And when implementing a technical solution, how do we get the optimal business value as soon as possible? For that reason, I'm happy to welcome Pia-Maria Thorén to this webinar. Pia-Maria early founded Agile People in order to work and spread the ideas of agility, specifically around leadership and HR management. She will give us an introduction of Agile HR and what implication that provides on the evolution of the HR role in general, and also implications to the supporting technology that is a part of a digitalization process. After Pia-Maria, Mark Carroll, a colleague of mine, will be presenting areas around digitalization. He has a long history in helping our customers transform and implement strategies and tools for HR. He will today cover aspects of digitalization and give us an insight to process evolution. What do we mean by the term best practice process? And also other pillars we find important to enable a successful HR transformation. We start off with Pia-Maria, though, and the Agile message. Pia-Maria, please, welcome.
Thank you for that warm welcome. That was fabulous. Very happy to be here and talking about Agile People and Agile HR, because that's really a topic that is very close to my heart. And I will share with you a presentation today about how HR can work with increasing agility and digitalization in your organizations. So I'm sharing my screen with you here. And playing from the start of this presentation. I put the title of this presentation to Turning Performance Management to Performance Enablement, because performance management is really, in my opinion, the heart of talent management. This is where we make a difference, and what are the changes that we see we need to make within performance management in the future of work and already. So I am Pia-Maria, and I'm the founder of Agile People. And Agile People is a network of dedicated Agile People coaches around the world who are all passionate about combining people and Agile to create engagement and performance in organizations. We start with a history, a view of history, and this is an example of how work could look like 100 years ago. Here we are in the ironing department, and today these women are in many places replaced with robots. It was about doing the same thing over and over again, and the challenge here was to make the flows as effective as possible and to standardize processes. The women on this picture had no say in how things should be done. It was all carefully thought out by a few in the top. They were just doing what they were told. So this is an old picture of how work looked like. And today we are, instead of just using the bodies of people, we are also trying to use their brains to a much larger degree, of course. If we instead move to the future of work, this is the transition that we see will happen. And it has already started and has been speeded up by the pandemic. Artificial intelligence and robotics will ultimately create more work, not less work. There won't be a shortage of skills, jobs in the future of work, but there will be a shortage of the right skills. So what we need to do is to unlearn and relearn. And that's something we will talk about. What are the things that HR will need to unlearn and relearn for the future of work? The majority of the workforce will freelance by 2027. And we have seen this, that many people are jumping off and starting their own enterprises right now. And the last thing I want to point out is that remote work becomes the norm. And this slide is actually not from last year, but I created it 2 years ago before the pandemic, but everybody has seen that this is already becoming a truth. If we look at the impact of the big world trends, there is a major shift in industries, from large industry disruptors such as Amazon and Uber to simple things like collaborating remotely in teams, to communicating, doing meetings and interviews via video tools, to doing our banking and ordering a variety of services via our mobiles. The globalization, of course, working and traveling and doing business across borders becomes a lot easier, from being a citizen of a country or a town primarily to becoming a citizen of the world. The shift to knowledge work, from working with our hands and with our brains more or less switched off, to producing products and solutions via creativity and innovation that aren't physical at all, moving away from these factories with the ironing ladies. Climate change. We're living in an environment that is changing at a faster rate, and we will need all our ingenuity and innovative capacity for our planet to remain viable for humans. The sharing economy. Companies like Uber and Airbnb have appeared as a reaction on the waste and materialism that characterized the latter part of the industrial era. This is a counter-reaction on a lifestyle not viable for the planet, and it continues to grow. Not everybody have to own everything. People are sharing houses, cars, tools, and all sorts of things. In this complex reality, we have to move from viewing the organization as a machine that can be controlled and managed to viewing it as a social living system. People are not cogs in a machinery. They have feelings, dreams, challenges, and thoughts, and cannot be controlled. People are not robots. They are complex adaptive systems that work from intrinsic motivation. And it means that we need to stop to see people as resources and view them as the living organisms as they are, who we need to treat differently to work optimally. No standardization or boxing people with labels or grades anymore, just skills to understand better what makes each person tick. I have written 3 books about the topics of Agile HR, Agile Leadership, and human motivation at work. And this is the first book that came out in 2017. The second book is a picture book with 220 illustrations that complement the message from the first book. If you want, I will make this book available for you for free download for everybody attending this conference, and we will send you an email with a code that will make this possible. So talk to Johan more about that after this webinar. The last book that we have written together came out in September 2020, and it's a co-creation between myself and 35 Agile people from around the world who have each written one chapter about one of the Agile People principles. We're going to look at the problems with traditional leadership and HR. First one is that we believe that we can control reality and make a perfect plan, but reality looks different. So the problem is that the world is not predictable anymore, and we need feedback regularly from reality to make the right choices along the way. So instead of making that perfect plan that we already know before it starts will not happen, you could say that in Agile, you accept reality as it is and you adapt to it. Another problem that we have is that we are focusing on the shareholder value when we should focus first on the customer value and the employee satisfaction. Happy employees serve customers, and happy customers will lay the foundation for a profitable organization that can deliver value to the shareholders. But this is a consequence of the value creation happening between employees and customers. So what about traditional performance ratings? Here we also have some problems. A year is much too long when the organizational reality changes quickly. Maybe someone else than the boss knows better how I have performed the last year. It's connected to salary, and this leads to sandbagging and lower set goals. This is when there is a conflict between a person setting as low goals as possible because they want to reach them, because I know that my reward is linked to that goal fulfillment. So instead of setting these fixed performance targets, we need to work with targets that can vary. So not fixed targets anymore. There is no proactivity in the traditional performance process. We are focusing on judging the past. Sub-optimizing effects breed competition and not cooperation. I will do anything to reach my goal as my reward will depend on it. Instead, we need to replace that with other ways of working. We're focusing on the wrong things here, just results and not the behaviors, when we know that it's really new behaviors that will make our organization better. But what should we do about all these problems, and what should we do instead? People ask me all the time, and I actually have some ideas. And one of the ideas has to do with the new role that leaders and HR need to take for the future of work. The Agile model of HR states that human resources job is not just to implement controls and standards and drive execution, but rather to facilitate and improve organizational agility. And this changes HR's mission and focus. Driving agility means driving programs which create adaptability, innovation, collaboration, and speed. And HR should be leading this change in my mind. I believe that HR has been sitting in the backseat for too long now, and it's time to step up and show what you can do for the organization. It's all about the people and the system in which the people live and work. If we can give the right prerequisites to people, they will take care of the rest. We don't need to do more things. We need to learn how to stop hindering people from giving their best effort to the company by providing the wrong structures. And HR has the power to decide on these structures that can support people to perform or make it more difficult. HR is controlling change management, organizational development, leadership programs, people development, talent acquisition, performance management, and they provide structures for the organization and how to work with these structures. And if HR keeps holding on to the old ways of doing these things, we don't have the possibility to change in any part of the company. That's why HR needs to go first here in the change initiative. We're going to have a look at one of these processes a bit more, where you can change how you work with the process and with the system that is supporting that process, and that's the performance management process. But first, I want to go through a little bit about how HR professionals need to change. So instead of extensive HR process competence, we also need to understand complex systems. Instead of deep skills only in some HR specialist area, we also need a deeper general skills in how to handle people in psychology, sociology, relationship management. Instead of no formal power to lead transformation, we need to give more trust and influence to HR to help in the transformation work. Instead of being stuck in certain roles, HR needs the flexibility to wear different hats depending on the need. One size fits all for training and different kinds of solutions. We need to tailor instead the solutions towards unique individual and local needs. Instead of developing and delivering solutions to the business, we need to involve the business and deliver the solutions together with them. Instead of mainly supporting the managers, we need to support all the people in the organization as HR. And instead of having a slightly parental view, we need to treat employees as the adults as they are. Instead of focusing on individual performance, we need to enable performance in the whole organizational system. And instead of expecting answers, we also need to increase our listening and our observing skills. Instead of checking compliance, enabling improvement, instead of being only back office workers, we need to walk the flow. We need to go out there. We call that go to Gemba in Lean, that we go out and talk to the people and understand their needs, and then we help them to fulfill their needs. We can divide Agile HR in two main parts. First, it's how we work internally in the HR department. And the second perspective is what should HR deliver now together with the business, not to the business. So this is a very common picture of the different processes, the talent management processes. And if we are adding an agile perspective to these processes, it will look totally different. We still need to, of course, perform, learn, develop, pay, and recruit in the future of work, of course. But the way we do it will look different. So that means that we need to configure our tools in a different way. Our platforms, our talent management systems needs to be configured in a different way than we have been doing it before. How can then HR internally start working in more agile ways? Well, you can start by running retrospectives for continuous improvements. That's when we look back and look at how can we improve ourselves for the future. We need to have much better customer focus, creating value for managers and our co-workers, and also for the external customers in the longer perspective. We need to work with quick feedback loops where we involve the managers and the co-workers in the feedback. And we need to work in cross-functional teams in HR with specialists and generalists, striving towards more T-shaped HR people, we call it. We will come to that later. Scrum is a way of running projects where there is an agile project management method, and that could be used for HR projects. Kanban boards, this is a way of visualizing a workflow or a work process, and we can work with that, for example, with recruitment or salary payments. We can also work with Lean for paying salaries. And we can work with more transparent people information, of course, taking GDPR into account, that some information needs to be kept secret. One example of ways of working in HR is rigid and limiting job descriptions, which is not actually supporting people to perform, but is making it more difficult to contribute where it's needed the most. Job descriptions are boxes for standing on, not living in, I usually say. So instead of limiting people by putting them in boxes and putting labels on them, we need to free people from too rigid limitations regarding people's contribution and be more open to what roles people can take. And instead of tasks, we put more focus on what expectations we have on people. So we express the job descriptions in a different way in the future of work. In Agile, we talk about T-shaped competence and T-shaped people. You need to have both breadth and depth. You can also call them generalized specialists or specialized generalists. This creates a lot of flexibility for both individuals, teams, and for the whole organization. When setting goals, at least 60% of objectives needs to start from the bottom up, because too much top-down dictation kills motivation and aspiration. So you start to create your vision with the dream at the top, and then you break it down in different steps, but you also break it from bottom up, because where is the business execution here? Where do you think? Actually, the business execution is happening at the bottom of this pyramid, not at the top. It's in the daily activities, and it's in what every employee is doing every day. And line of sight is something we call it. It's created when you make a visible path from daily activities to the vision at the top and how these different steps are aligned. This gives a clarity of direction of where the company is heading, and how is one of the most engaging factors. It gives employees a sense of context and clarifies their contribution to the bigger picture. And the development of an employee does not need to follow a linear or predefined career ladder. Depending on where a person is in their life, different paths may apply. It's okay to take less responsibility in work when you, for example, have small children or take care of your parents. Life goes up and down, and challenges come and go. We need to adjust to the needs of the person more than standardizing career paths. Maybe they want to be moving to some other function, a lateral move, or maybe take an entirely new role. So employee journey mapping illustrates the totality of the experience employees have with your business, pointing out interesting points for intervention. Employees are the organization's internal customer, and we want to make the experience for them as valuable as possible so that they are willing to engage and deliver value for the whole business. So we need to evolve career paths from a linear fixed path to a dynamic, purpose-driven journey that is directed by the individual themselves, while balancing the needs of the organization with the needs of the individual. We can also work more with team performance and focus on that over individual performance. We need to work with continuous coaching and continuous feedback in the performance management process. And this culture of continuous coaching and feedback among all employees needs to involve not just feedback from managers, and not just once or a couple of times a year. It needs to happen all the time. We have some principles for increasing performance and to work with performance management in the future of work. We are moving from some things to other things. Instead of the annual appraisal and rating, we move towards continuous coaching and feedback. Instead of forced ranking, some companies experiment with no ranking at all. Instead of the annual goals and the annual process, we work with quarterly or monthly goals with regular check-ins. And this is also possible in those talent management systems. They can be configured in different ways. Instead of annual talent reviews by managers, we need to work with continuous talent reviews by also peers. Instead of recognition only by the manager, We need to recognize each other by peers and managers and team leaders and everybody. Instead of career plans for promotion and high posts, we need career plans for everybody with open movement and career mobility. Instead of focusing on moving up or out, which we did in the past, we try to move across, up, down, and around, maybe out of the organization and in again. So it's much more flexibility here in how you make a career. Instead of the manager evaluating performance, everyone can evaluate themselves with the help of tools like objectives and key results. Instead of no transparency in goals, we have total goal transparency. And instead of ratings linked to results, we believe that ratings need to be linked to learning and growth and continuous improvement instead. I have worked with one Swedish bank and implemented OKRs in success factors, and it worked perfectly. The bank needed to change their current performance management process and decided to try with objectives and key results. And we started to educate all the managers to be able to educate their employees in large manager meetings where they were trained. We started by setting just one OKR per person, and we ran open workshops for people to join. In the beginning, we just had a simple Excel sheet in a shared server, but then we started to work with success factors and implemented a new way of working with goals and flexible, continuously improving in a common direction. Also, another case of agile performance management, this one from a car manufacturing company. Here it's like a cycle, a performance cycle. We're building a performance process around a goal instead of building it around a year. And this was designed for this car manufacturing company for 23,000 employees at the time. And in Agile, we talk a lot about sprints, and this is really a kind of a sprint, you could say. I have some last words to say now before we open up for Q&A, and we're also going to listen to Mark and talk about digitalization. How can you start with Agile HR? Well, you can start in many different ways. A tip is to make it very easy, to start very small, and to make it as simple as possible, but not simpler. Albert Einstein was indeed a smart man. We can run a retrospective every week in the HR department. We can visualize work on the wall with a Kanban board that develops together with the team. We can make a backlog together with the leadership team, prioritizing work. We can start with a daily morning meeting in the HR team. We can try to strive towards more T-shaped HR people. We can start to give feedback using small kudo cards. We can find a common HR project that you could use as a pilot Agile project where a cross-functional HR team could all contribute. Small changes will gradually change the culture and increase agility in your HR team. We in Agile People put together a manifesto to support you to understand how the move needs to look like. We came together in 2019 during 4 intensive days. And this is the result. And this is our gift to you. And with this, I'm just going to give a last shout out. Start today, follow the principles, and start your personal and organizational learning journey towards greater people and business agility. The sooner you start, the sooner you will reap the benefits from happy performing people working together towards a common vision. So, last but not least, we invite you to also join the Agile People community, and you can, if you want to know more, visit agilepeople.com. And now I am going to turn over again to you, Juan.
Yes, thank you very much, Pia-Maria. That was extremely interesting to hear about, first of all, the principles, but also about your experience with these two companies. We will get back to you when it comes to questions and answers, and I hope that we can get Mark on the line now. We have had some challenges with the technology, and now
Johan, can you hear me?
Absolutely, Mark.
Okay, finally works. Excellent.
The funny thing is, in this digital time, we're also enjoying your presentation from Paris, as it is.
Absolutely.
So, I'll leave it to you to give us a brief introduction about the gospel of digitalization and your experience in that matter.
Thanks, Johan. So I'm following along a lot from what Pia-Maria was just saying, and I especially that last quote: "Start simple, make it simple, but you make it as simple as possible, but not simpler than it needs to be." That's the same mantra that we use when we're talking about digitalization. Hold on, just need to go back to my presentation so it actually works. So according to a recent Gartner CHRO survey, 61% of CHROs are unprepared for digital transformation. Now, there are various reasons for that. It could be a lack of understanding of what digital actually means. There's a big difference between the activities of today and the demands of tomorrow's organization. But a lot of it, I think, is the sheer scope of digitalization. It can be overwhelming if you think about it in its totality. The thing is that we don't need to think about it in its totality. Dave Ulrich, in his digital HR agenda, points out that there are 4 phases of digital maturity. And I would suspect that quite a lot of companies are at least in one of the early phases, if not all the way through these phases. The first one is where we work towards HR efficiency. This is where we're implementing technology platforms that can help us to efficiently manage our HR processes. The second phase is HR effectiveness, where we're using that technology to help upgrade the practices in how we manage our people, the performance management, communication, the way we work together. And this is where an awful lot of organizations are beginning to get to. But we need to move on to these next 2 phases. The first one, the ability to share information across the business, and also to bring information in from the outside. All of this together helps us to manage our organization better, not just necessarily within the HR organization, of course, but the business itself. And then the final phase of that digital maturity is this connection, the experience of the people, building this emotional connection, a sense of belonging of our people, creating a social network and shared experiences through technology. This is what we call human experience management, and that's the final phase of digital maturity. We don't get there, as I said, we don't get there all at once. Digitalization is a journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And it starts by thoughtfully examining the current state of the company and what our potential future state should be. There was a Gartner study, 2019 to 2021 strategic roadmap, and it says that HCM requires an agile mindset led by HR, but involving the entire organization in continuous experimentation. And that is your digitalization journey. You need to have a strategic roadmap, but it's a roadmap that works for your organization. It's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. What works for one organization is not necessarily going to work for another organization. And you can jump in at any point. Now, my focus tends to be SAP SuccessFactors. That's my comfort zone. So when I talk about an integrated talent management solution, that's where I'm going. But an integrated talent management solution has mostly has these same modules: recruiting, onboarding, learning, performance and goals, compensation, succession development. You can start at any point in that talent management suite, or you could start with what we would call the backbone. So for just 3 examples I'm going to give you of where you can start your digital journey. First one would be that what SAP SuccessFactors calls Employee Central. It's your workforce administration tool. It's where your HR master data sits. This is an opportunity to get your master data aligned across the business. That is truly the backbone of where we go and how we manage our business with our people data. It's also where we begin to see self-service, where employees can begin to manage their own data. their vacation days, their absences. They're independent in understanding what it is that we know about them and how they get information back and forth to us. It reduces paperwork. It streamlines approval processes. The self-service is usually available on a mobile app. It allows us to be a lot more open and flexible about the way that we work with our people. Another area where you could start would be with the recruiting module. And this is actually not a bad one in the current setting. What COVID has shown us is that the old ways of looking at going out and recruiting people and these long recruitment times, they don't necessarily work all that well. And especially now, as economies are beginning to recover and we're beginning to open up and we have tight labor markets in a lot of areas, we've got a lot of openings. We don't necessarily have an awful lot of people out there looking for jobs. We need to make sure that we are agile and flexible in the way that we're looking for people and able to adapt to changes in demand and other unpredictable needs in the marketplace. One of the ways that you can address that in a recruiting module is to build your talent pools focused on what the talent trends are in the market. Not necessarily on what your current business needs are, but what the talent trends are. Build your hiring process around that so that it's candidate-centric, so that we're getting the best people into the organization. Not necessarily those people who are going to continue with the way we've always worked, but people who can bring new and innovative ideas into the organization to help us do deliver our mission better. And then the final starting point that I would like to talk about is performance and goals. Pia-Maria was just talking about the ways that we could move from a traditional way of doing performance management to doing sort of performance development with our employees. And one of those ways is this open, consistent, holistic feedback, this continuous have with our employees. Well, SuccessFactors, for example, has a way to capture that in the continuous performance management functionality of the performance management module. In addition, there's the possibility of doing a 360-degree feedback, and it can be used especially as a development tool to make sure that we're moving our people along in their personal and professional development in such a way that we are building a symbiotic relationship with what the organization needs to deliver on our mission. And a final point about that performance management module is this ask feedback functionality. A lot of times, traditionally, we think about managers who are providing, assessing the employees, and it tends to be this one-way sort of activity, this one-way sort of vision of how the employee is doing in the organization. But in today's world, we have very flexible organizations where we don't necessarily have just this one-to-one relationship or a one-to-many relationship from a manager to employee, many-to-one from the employee to the manager, but we have many-to-many where employees work not just for their legal or line manager, but they can work for a number of different managers within the organization depending on the projects that they get put on. They can work, like I said, across the organization, and they can work sometimes across different organizations. This ask feedback functionality supports gathering information, gathering feedback, even from people outside the organization. So you're working, for example, with vendors here, or you're working with delivering training with an external organization. The employee that we're doing the performance feedback on, we can get feedback not just from those people within the organization, but people outside of the organization. One of the key elements, though, and this is what Pia-Maria was also talking about, is the importance of knowing that what we have always done is not what's going to get us where we need to go in the future. And when we're talking about digitalization, it's extremely important to understand that by switching out the tools that you have today for the tools that you would have tomorrow, you're not necessarily solving any of your problems, and you're not necessarily going in an agile direction. You have to think about the whole thing. You have to think about it holistically. And these 5 pillars of transformation that I'm showing you right now, that's what we consider to be a key part of the success of an HR transformation. The second column there, the enabling technology, that's what we're talking about now with digitalization. But it's not so much the tools that we're going to use, but how it is that we're going to use them. This process standardization in that first column, how we're going to use them is a very key part of the success of any kind of an HR transformation. We also need to look at that organization design. That's the fourth column right there. And this is what we were talking about earlier, where we've got different parts of the organization that can work together in different ways. It can also be almost be sort of a kaleidoscope where we've got teams coming together to deliver certain projects, deliver certain missions within the organization. Keeping that in mind is going to be a big part of making sure that when we do digitalize, when we do put a new HR system in place, that we're doing so in a way that will support how it is we would like to work in the future. And that, although very short, is the message that I would like to give about digitalization of HR. So Johan, I'm going to turn this back over to you now for questions and answers.
Please stay on the line, Mark, and I hope that Pia-Maria is joining us as well. There you go. So thank you very much, Mark. It was very condensed. All the information here is extremely condensed. So a possibility now for 10 minutes to reason about this is very welcome, of course. And I would like to ask a specific question that has been very much on my mind here, and it might be a sort of a partly explosive. So let's see how you guys how we can handle this, because to me it sounds like Agile is proposing sort of a constant change, or if you will, chaos. And digitalization as such is proposing standardization, control, and very little change. I mean, how will we meet with these two different views?
Do you want to start, Pia-Maria?
Sure, yeah. I don't think it's about chaos. I think it's about adapting continuously to the changing environment. That's what we have to do. It's not about we manage change and then we manage change, but it's all about that change will happen all the time at a faster pace. We need all the time to look out for how can we adjust and how can we continuously improve and learn and move with the changes instead of against them. And COVID is the perfect example of this. What can we do when reality totally changes? How can we adjust? How will we change our businesses? We, for example, went online totally from doing in-person training, only in-person training, to totally moving online with videos and remote tools and the digitalization 100%. In that way, we saved our organization. And these are the shifts that may become necessary more often in the future of work, because it is an increasingly unpredictable environment out there, and that's why we need to move with that. And that means not that we should not standardize, but it means that we should open up systems and make them more flexible and possible to change, and to instead of tailor for different needs in different times and in different places in the organization to a larger degree. Of course, we still will have a degree of standardization, but maybe less standardization than we have seen in the past, because it's just not possible to work in exactly the same way everywhere in the world all the time.
Yeah, so if you think about it, this digitalization, the HR systems that we're going to use, that is the backbone. It is standard, but it's the way that you use it that makes it agile. It's not the system itself, but it's the way that you use the functionalities in the system. And the OKR example that Pia-Maria gave during her presentation is a perfect example of this. You will have a certain way that you will interact with that performance module to get those OKRs in place, etc. It's the content that is more important than the fact that you're using a standard tool where you're capturing the content and managing it through. That's a very good example. Another example, of course, is the learning module. We do need a library. We need a standard way that we can log in, that we can find courses that we're going to take. That doesn't mean, though, is that everything has to be very bog standard, black and white, and in a row. We need to have a flexible way of understanding what are my development needs, and where can I go and address my development needs. The standard part is the system. Yes, it's the way that we use it that helps to make it agile.
Mm. Yeah, I agree completely. And it's very much about visualizing. It's about opening up. It's about making it possible to change. And maybe also using different labels than you have done before. So you can change the names of things. That's also possible. So it's more that you need, as customers, you need to think yourself instead of letting consultants who don't have this knowledge do the configuration for you if they don't have it. Some have it, some don't have it, but it's your responsibility that you get things right in the system. Really,
it's very important that you are business focused. We do not do HR for HR's sake. That's a non-starter. We just get nowhere with that. We need to make sure that we're business focused. And so when you're configuring the system, when you're developing your processes, when you work in a new way, you're constantly thinking about what does the business need, and how can I use those the business and the people together to get where I need to go.
Definitely.
So another thing that came up here, I guess there is a lot of participants here that has sort of an outspoken assignment from their companies to drive change within HR. Specifically for you, Pia-Maria, from your standpoint, sort of a short-term, mid-term, long-term, what would the sort of the initial actions should propose to be from your perspective? I mean, of course, people are in different positions now, but if you would elaborate on a typical short-term scenario, mid-term scenario, and a long-term, where they should strive to be in their transformation work.
Yeah, this is a very hard question because we don't follow any recipes in Agile. There is no silver bullet. There is no long-term, this is the way it's going to be. I think you should start working with scenario planning instead. And you should see, this could happen, but it could also be that we move in a different direction, or a third or a fourth direction. But if you do scenario planning, you will at least be a little bit prepared of what will come. But the reality will probably not follow any of the scenarios that you have mapped up completely, but it will be a mix of all of them. And you need to all the time try to change with what is happening in the world. And the short scenario is then really to be aware of this and to get trained and to get coached to do it, because this is not easy for a big old-fashioned traditional organization to start suddenly just thinking in a different way when we are used to scientific management and Taylorism and all the stuff from the past, as we saw from the factory picture. This is a very gradual process. Unless you do a total makeover, you can do that too. You can do a total makeover and transform everything top down. Just this is the way we do it right now, and the people who don't like it, you can leave, you know. But this is really not the way we do it. But
absolutely, and there is actually an additional question coming up in that topic, and maybe you already responded to it, but I just want to point it out. So it's for you, Pia-Maria. Do you typically work with your customers before or during their digitalization transformation?
Yeah.
Or are the HR typically trained to be agile before the tech projects? What's your recommendation in that sense?
My recommendation is that you need to know first what you want out of the system before you implement the system, obviously. I mean, you can't do that afterwards, because then you implement the wrong system configuration, right?
Yeah.
You need to know first, this is how we want to work, and you need to understand Agile first, and then you go to the system implementation. You can obviously maybe change it later, but then you have to redo a lot of things. But yeah, I think you should look at your processes regularly and maybe think about what can we do to improve and learn and change.
Right.
Well, absolutely. You do need to have that continuous process improvement built into the way that you work. Nothing is stable. Nothing is static. So we do need to have that continuous, not just those things that are happening within the organization, but all of those external factors, Pia-Maria, that you were talking about earlier. We need to make sure that we are keeping those in mind as we build the current state and as we're preparing for the future state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about time to wrap up here. And just a final question to you, Mark, on the same topic here. If only one advice to these participants here today, what should be sort of their first step when considering digitalization HR?
Well, the first thing I would do is figure out what my pain points are within the organization. That's the first thing I would do. And that then would drive the parts, the way that I divide up my HR transformation. I'm with Pia-Maria on this. I would not recommend a full transformation all at the same time. It's equivalent to that old waterfall approach to doing projects. I do recommend going in chunks and figuring out what those chunks are. You need to look at the pain points first and figure out where is it that I can improve the best and the easiest, and then move on from there with the chunks.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. So, just for the audience now, then, that we will send out this presentation to you all, and I will also see to that the book from Pia-Maria is distributed to you all. I want to thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pia-Maria. Thank you, Mark, for today's session. I trust that it has been some good knowledge on how you can take these initiatives further. And on the top of agility and efficient feedback loops, please feel free to sign up for our webinar on May 20th, where we will discuss the importance of measuring employee experience. So see you all there, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johan.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Mark, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.